My name is Audrey, 32 years old, and working as a financial analyst in Chicago. I spent $5,000 of my savings to rent a beautiful beachside resort for our family reunion commemorating my parents' 40th anniversary. When I arrived with arms full of decorations, the place was empty. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. We decided to eat at Grandma's instead. 2 hours later, Mom and my sister showed up laughing. "We brought you some leftovers," Mom said, extending a plastic container. I smiled tightly. "If you are watching this, please let me know where you are viewing from. Hit like and subscribe, and stick around to find out how I finally stood up for myself after years of being taken for granted." Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in suburban Detroit, our family of 6 was once the picture of harmony. My parents, Margaret and Richard, raised us with traditional family values. As the youngest of 4 siblings, I looked up to my older brothers, Christopher and Daniel, and my sister Stephanie. Every month without fail, we would gather for Sunday dinner, a tradition my father insisted upon to keep the family bonds strong. These dinners were full of laughter, updates about our lives, and sometimes heated but good-natured debates. From an early age, I found myself naturally stepping into the role of the family caretaker. While my siblings focused on their own interests, I was the one who remembered birthdays, organized holiday celebrations, and made sure everyone felt special on their important days. I kept a small notebook with everyone's preferences. Dad preferred apple pie over chocolate cake. Christopher was allergic to shellfish. Daniel loved anything with cinnamon. And Stephanie always appreciated fresh flowers, particularly tulips. Our family vacations to Lake Michigan every summer created some of my fondest memories. We would rent a cabin for 2 weeks, spending days swimming, fishing, and hiking. In the evenings, we gathered around a bonfire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. Those moments under the stars with my family felt magical, like we were connected by something unbreakable. My mother, Margaret, would often tell me, "Audrey, you have such a giving heart. You are the glue that holds this family together." Her words filled me with pride and purpose. Being needed by my family gave me a sense of identity and belonging that I cherished. When I was 18, I received a scholarship to study finance at Northwestern University. Though excited about this opportunity, leaving my family was difficult. Throughout my college years, I made the 4-hour drive home at least twice a month, often arriving late Friday night with homemade cookies or small gifts for everyone. During finals week, when my classmates were focused solely on studying, I was still ordering birthday presents online for Daniel, or helping Stephanie plan her wedding remotely. During my junior year, when Dad had minor surgery, I took a week off from classes to help at home cooking meals and driving him to follow-up appointments. My professors were understanding, but my roommate Katie questioned my priorities. "Your family is full of capable adults," she said. "They managed before you were born. They can handle a week without you." Her words stung because they challenged the role I had built for myself. But I dismissed her concern, convinced that my family truly needed me in a way others might not understand. After graduation, I accepted a position with a financial firm in Chicago. Though now living 200 miles from my family, I maintained my role as the family caretaker. I set calendar reminders for important dates, sent care packages, and made regular calls to check in on everyone. When Stephanie had her first child, I took 3 weeks of my vacation time to stay with her and help with the baby. When Christopher went through a difficult divorce, I spent weekends helping him move and organize his new apartment. The first holiday season after I moved to Chicago, I insisted on hosting Thanksgiving in my small apartment. I spent weeks planning the menu, decorating and preparing the perfect gathering space. Everyone complimented the food and atmosphere, and Mom hugged me, saying, "What would we do without our Audrey? No one takes care of us like you do." Those words validated all my efforts and reinforced my belief that I was fulfilling my most important role, being the person my family could always count on. When Dad turned 60, I organized a surprise party, flying in relatives from across the country, and creating a video montage of family memories. The joy on his face when everyone shouted, Surprise made the weeks of planning and $1,000 expense completely worthwhile. During these years, I dated occasionally, but relationships often fizzled out when men realized my family would always come first. Jordan, my longest relationship, lasting almost 2 years, finally ended things after I canceled our anniversary dinner because Stephanie needed emergency babysitting. "You need to figure out where your own life fits into all this family devotion," were his parting words. But I never regretted my choices. My identity was deeply intertwined with being the reliable one, the organizer, the giver in the family. The validation I received from them felt worth any personal sacrifice. When I received my first significant bonus at work, I used it to pay off the remainder of Daniel's student loans, rather than building my own savings. His tearful thanks convinced me I had made the right choice. As years passed, our monthly family gatherings became slightly less regular, but I worked hard to maintain our traditions. I created a family newsletter, started a shared digital photo album, and established a family group chat to keep everyone connected, despite busy schedules and growing distances. I believed with all my heart that these efforts were appreciated and reciprocated in ways that mattered. Looking back now, I can see I was creating a narrative that wasn't entirely accurate, but at the time, I truly believed our family bond was exceptional and mutual. The reality would take me years to recognize, and even longer to accept. The first subtle sign that something was off came 3 years after I moved to Chicago. I had called each family member multiple times to coordinate our traditional Christmas gathering, but responses were delayed and non-committal. When I finally managed to get everyone to confirm, I spent weeks shopping for personalized gifts, preparing traditional family recipes, and decorating my apartment. The morning of Christmas Eve, just as I was putting the final touches on everything, my phone rang. "Honey, we're thinking of just doing something small at home this year," Mom said casually. "Stephanie's kids have been sick, and everyone's just so tired from all the holiday rushing around." I stood in my kitchen surrounded by bags of gifts and ingredients for dishes I knew everyone loved. "But everything's ready here," I said, trying to keep disappointment from my voice. "I've been planning for weeks." "Oh, you always go overboard anyway," Mom laughed. "Just bring the gifts when you come for New Year's instead." That night, scrolling through social media while eating Christmas cookies alone, I saw photos posted by Stephanie, our entire family gathered at her house, turkey on the table, everyone wearing festive sweaters. "Family Christmas tradition," read the caption. I had not been invited. When I called Mom the next day, trying to keep my voice steady, she brushed it off. "It was very last minute. We knew you had already done so much preparation, we didn't want to disappoint you by asking you to change plans." The explanation made little sense, but I accepted it, telling myself families sometimes have miscommunications. Over the next year, I noticed my messages in our family group chat often went unanswered. When I shared news about a promotion at work, the congratulations were perfunctory at best. My requests for family updates were met with brief replies, "All good here," or "Nothing new to report." I tried scheduling video calls, but someone always had a conflict. I suggested visiting home more often, but there was always a reason why next month might be better. When I did visit, conversations felt strained, as if I had missed inside jokes or references to events I knew nothing about. One Sunday evening, I called Daniel to chat and heard background noise that sounded like a family gathering. When I asked what was going on, he hesitated before admitting everyone had gathered for dinner at Mom and Dad's house. "We didn't think you'd be able to make it on such short notice," he explained awkwardly. "It was very impromptu." The pattern continued and intensified. My birthday passed with just text messages, despite the elaborate celebrations I always organized for everyone else. When I sent a group message suggesting we plan Dad's birthday party, Stephanie replied that they had already handled it without including any details or invitation. I began sending more gifts, making more frequent calls, and offering more help with everyone's problems. If I could just be useful enough, valuable enough, surely they would want to include me again. I transferred money to Christopher when he mentioned car troubles, sent care packages to my nieces and nephews for every minor accomplishment, and constantly offered to fly home at a moment's notice if anyone needed anything. My friend Heather noticed the toll this was taking. Over coffee one Saturday, she asked pointed questions about what I was getting from these relationships. "When was the last time any of them called just to see how you were doing?" she asked. I couldn't remember. "When was the last time they offered to visit you?" "Never." "Audrey, I'm concerned you're being taken advantage of," she said gently. "Relationships should be reciprocal." I defended my family fiercely. "They're just busy. They have kids, local commitments. It's different for me being single and away from home." But her words planted a seed of doubt I couldn't quite shake. That Thanksgiving, I flew home despite not receiving a clear invitation. When I arrived at my parents' house with 4 pies I had baked at 4 a.m. Before my flight, the atmosphere was awkward. "We weren't sure you were coming," Mom said, looking flustered. "We've only set the table for 8. I stood in the entryway. Pies balanced in my arms, as she explained they had invited neighbors to fill empty seats. The implication that my seat was considered empty before their neighbors were invited cut deeply. Throughout the meal, conversation flowed around me rather than including me. References were made to a family trip to a cabin in August that I had never heard about. When I asked about it, Christopher looked uncomfortable. "It was just something we pulled together last minute," he explained, not meeting my eyes. "For 5 days?" I asked, having caught details of the duration in their conversation. "You were probably busy with work," Stephanie interjected quickly. "We know how dedicated you are to your career." The truth was, I had taken only 7 vacation days that entire year, saving them for family events that I was apparently not being invited to. Later that evening, I overheard Mom and Stephanie in the kitchen. "Did you have to mention the cabin trip?" Mom whispered. "You know how she gets always making us feel guilty when she's not included." "It's exhausting," Stephanie agreed. "The constant texts, always wanting to know everything, sending stuff nobody asks for." I slipped away before they realized I had heard my hands shaking as I packed my overnight bag. I made an excuse about an early client call and drove to a hotel where I spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying years of interactions in a new and painful light. The following month, I scaled back my communication, waiting to see if anyone would notice or reach out. 3 weeks passed before I received a text from Mom. "Are you mad at us about something? Dad needs help setting up his new phone." No questions about my well-being, just a request for tech support. I provided detailed instructions via email, but did not call. Another 2 weeks passed in silence. Christmas approached, and no plans were discussed in the family chat. When I finally asked directly, Mom replied that they were keeping it simple this year, with no details offered. I sent gifts as usual, but received only a group thank you text in return. My own gifts arrived late January in a single box, with no individual wrapping, with a note explaining they had been so busy with the holidays they hadn't had time to send them earlier. Valentine's Day came, and social media showed me another family gathering. I hadn't known about a family game night with heart-shaped cookies and decorations. The photos showed genuine joy and connection, a sharp contrast to the strained interactions I experienced during my visits. Despite all these warning signs, I still believed I could fix whatever was broken. Perhaps if I made a grand gesture, something so generous and thoughtful that it couldn't be dismissed, I could reclaim my place in the family. With my parents' 40th wedding anniversary approaching, I saw my opportunity to rebuild what had been lost. As April approached, bringing with it my parents' milestone 40th anniversary, I saw an opportunity to reconnect our increasingly fragmented family. This celebration could be the perfect way to remind everyone of our shared history and values. I still remembered the stories of their wedding day, Mom in her grandmother's restored lace dress. Dad so nervous, he put the ring on the wrong finger. The reception in my grandparents' backyard, where they danced under string lights. Until dawn. I began planning 2 months in advance, determined to create an event worthy of such a significant occasion. After researching various options, I discovered Lakeside Haven Resort, a picturesque property on Lake Michigan, with luxury cabins, a main lodge, and private beach access. It was just 3 hours from my parents' home, close enough for everyone to attend easily, but special enough to feel like a proper celebration. The resort offered an anniversary package that included accommodations for up to 20 people, a private dinner with customized menu, a professional photographer, and access to all amenities: swimming pool, hiking trails, boat rentals, and spa services. The price was substantial, $5,000 for the weekend, but I had been saving for a home down payment and decided this was more important. Family first always. I created digital invitations with old and new family photos, a timeline of my parents' life together, and details about the resort. The responses came quickly and enthusiastically. "This looks amazing. We're definitely in," texted Christopher. "The kids will love the pool. Count us in," wrote Stephanie. "What a wonderful idea, honey. Your father and I are touched," Mom replied. Even my usually reserved father called to express his appreciation. "This means a lot to us, Audrey. Having everyone together is the best gift we could ask for." Their positive responses fueled my excitement. I spent hours on the phone with the resort staff, customizing every detail. For the dinner menu, I included all my parents' favorites: Dad's beloved beef Wellington, Mom's favorite lemon herb salmon, and the chocolate raspberry cake from the bakery they had used for their wedding. I arranged for the main lodge to be decorated with enlarged photos from their 4 decades together, their honeymoon in Niagara Falls, the purchase of their first home, the birth of each child, family vacations, graduations, weddings, and the poured-in arrivals of grandchildren. I wanted them to walk into the space and see their life's journey celebrated in grand fashion. For activities, I scheduled a family photography session on the beach, reserved a pontoon boat for a sunset cruise, and arranged for a local musician to play the songs from their wedding playlist during dinner. I ordered custom photo albums as gifts for everyone, commissioned a family tree painting, and even had special anniversary wine labels created featuring my parents' wedding photo. As the event grew closer, I sent weekly updates to the family group chat, confirming details and building anticipation. While responses became less frequent, I attributed this to everyone's busy schedules. When I asked for recent photos to complete the displays, only Daniel sent any, but I filled in gaps with images from social media. 2 weeks before the event, I called the resort to confirm all arrangements. Everything was set perfectly. 6 cabins reserved for our family, the main lodge prepared for our dinner, all special requests accommodated. The staff seemed almost as excited as I was about the celebration. "Your family is going to be blown away," the event coordinator assured me. "This is one of the most thoughtful anniversary celebrations we've helped organize." 1 week before the big weekend, I sent a final confirmation message to everyone. Just a reminder that check-in at Lakeside Haven begins at 3 p.m. on Friday. I will be there early to make sure everything is ready. Cannot wait to celebrate Mom and Dad's incredible 40 years together. See you all there. The responses were sparse but positive. Mom replied with a heart emoji. Daniel confirmed they would arrive around 5 p.m., and Stephanie asked if the resort had high chairs available for her youngest. I took care of her request, immediately messaging her back with confirmation. Christopher did not respond, but he had always been bad about checking messages, so I wasn't concerned. The day before the event, I took a personal day from work to drive to the resort. The 3-hour journey gave me time to imagine the perfect weekend ahead, family reconnecting, memories being shared, perhaps even some healing of the distance I had felt growing between us. I pictured Mom's face when she saw the photo display Dad tearing up during the anniversary toast. I had prepared my nieces and nephews playing together on the beach, while the adults reminisced and strengthened our bonds. I arrived at Lakeside Haven at noon, giving myself plenty of time to oversee the final preparations. The resort exceeded my expectations with its rustic yet elegant main lodge overlooking crystal blue waters, charming individual cabins, nestled among pine trees, and immaculate grounds bursting with spring flowers. The staff welcomed me warmly, taking me on a tour of all the spaces we would be using. The private dining room was being transformed according to my specifications, with round tables draped in cream linens, centerpieces of roses and hydrangeas, Mom's wedding flowers and twinkling lights creating a romantic atmosphere. A table near the entrance held framed photos and memorabilia I had shipped ahead. I inspected each cabin, making sure they were properly prepared for their occupants. For my parents, I had reserved the premium lakefront cabin with a private deck and fireplace. I placed a gift basket in each accommodation tailored to the preferences of the occupants' favorite snacks, drinks, and small thoughtful items. By 6 p.m., everything was perfect. I checked into my own cabin, showered, and changed into a blue dress I had bought specifically for the weekend. The resort was quiet, peaceful, with the gentle sound of waves lapping at the shore and birds calling in the distance. I sat on my porch watching the sun begin its descent and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Whatever distance had grown between us would surely be bridged by this shared experience. As 7 p.m. approached the scheduled arrival time for most family members, I walked to the main lodge to greet everyone. I had arranged for welcome cocktails and appetizers to be served as people arrived, giving everyone a chance to settle in before dinner at 8:30. 7:30 came and went with no arrivals. I checked my phone repeatedly, finding no messages. At 7:45 I called Mom, but the call went to voicemail. I texted the group chat. "Everything is ready at the resort. Let me know if anyone needs directions." No responses. By 8:15, with dinner preparations well underway, and still no sign of my family, anxiety began to replace anticipation. I called each of them individually, reaching only voicemails. I paced the empty lodge, reassuring the increasingly concerned staff that my family would arrive soon, probably just delayed by traffic or getting the children ready. At 8:45, my phone finally chimed with a message. From Mom. "We decided to have a small gathering at your grandmother's house instead. The drive to the resort seemed too long for your father after his busy week. Hope you understand." I stared at the message in disbelief, unable to process what I was reading. They had decided, without telling me, after all the planning, the expense, the anticipation. I called immediately, but again reached voicemail. I sent urgent messages to everyone, asking what was happening, but received no responses. The knot in my stomach tightened as I approached the restaurant manager to explain that our dinner would need to be delayed. His sympathetic expression only deepened my humiliation. An hour later, as I sat alone on a bench overlooking the darkened lake, headlights appeared in the resort driveway. A single car pulled up, and I recognized my mother and Stephanie getting out. They walked toward me casually, as if arriving for a regular visit rather than hours late to a meticulously planned celebration. "There you are," Mom said, holding a plastic container. "We brought you some leftovers from Grandma's. Everyone says hi." I stood frozen on the resort's wooden walkway, staring at my mother and sister in the soft glow of the pathway lights. Margaret looked relaxed in her casual sweater and jeans, certainly not dressed for the anniversary dinner I had planned. Stephanie was checking her phone, barely making eye contact with me. Leftovers. I finally managed to say, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "I don't understand. Everyone confirmed they were coming here. I've been sending updates for weeks." Mom shrugged, extending the plastic container toward me. "Plans change, honey. Your father was exhausted from work, and Grandma really wanted to host. You know how she gets when she sets her mind on something." I couldn't bring myself to take the container. Behind me, the resort staff were discreetly dismantling the elaborate anniversary dinner setup I had spent hours perfecting earlier that day. The centerpieces I had specifically designed to incorporate elements from my parents' wedding. The custom menu cards with their names and wedding date embossed in gold. The anniversary cake waiting in the kitchen. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I've been here since noon making sure everything was perfect. The resort staff have been working all day. I confirmed with everyone last week." Stephanie finally looked up from her phone. We did tell you. Mom texted you. An hour ago, I said, my voice rising, despite my efforts to remain calm, after I'd been waiting for hours. After everything was ready. Audrey, you're overreacting, Mom said, her tone shifting to one I recognized from childhood, the one used when she thought one of us was being unreasonable. It's just dinner. We can do the resort another time. Just dinner, I repeated, gesturing toward the lodge behind me. I planned this for 2 months. I spent $5,000 to rent this entire place for our family. That got their attention. Mom's eyebrows shot up. $5,000. That's ridiculous, Audrey. Nobody asked you to spend that kind of money. It's Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary. Everyone seemed excited about celebrating here. Dad himself told me having everyone together was the best gift you could ask for. Stephanie's expression softened slightly. We didn't realize you'd gone to such expense. But honestly, Audrey, you always do this. You go overboard without checking if it's what people actually want. Her words hit like a physical blow. What are you talking about? Everyone confirmed they were coming. Nobody said anything about Grandma's house until I was already here waiting for hours. Mom sighed dramatically. Well, we're here now. We brought you food. I don't see why you're making such a fuss. I took a deep breath, trying to process the surreal conversation. Where is everyone else? Dad, Christopher, Daniel, the kids? Still at Grandma's, Stephanie replied, checking her watch. We told them we'd just drop this off and head back. The kids are playing games with Grandpa. The casual way she described the family gathering, I should have been part of, sent a wave of nausea through me. So everyone's together right now. The whole family. Mom nodded, seemingly oblivious to the impact of her words. Yes, it's been lovely. Your Aunt Patricia and Uncle George came too. George grilled steaks on the new barbecue. We got your father for the anniversary. Christopher brought that wine you sent him for Christmas, the one from that vineyard in California. Each detail was another twist of the knife. The wine I'd specially ordered and had shipped at considerable expense, saved for a special occasion, was being enjoyed at a family gathering I knew nothing about. When did you all decide to do this at Grandma's? I asked, my voice now barely above a whisper. Mom and Stephanie exchanged a quick glance before Mom answered. Oh, it just came together naturally. You know how these things happen. Something in their exchange triggered a terrible suspicion. When exactly did this just come together? More uncomfortable glances between them. Stephanie suddenly became very interested in her cuticles. Mom, I pressed. Well, if you must know, Mom finally said, with a hint of irritation, we started planning it last weekend. Your grandmother really wanted to host something for our anniversary, and it seemed easier for everyone to drive to her house than all the way out here. Last weekend? I repeated flatly, and no one thought to tell me. Even though I've been sending detailed messages about this resort plan for 2 months. We didn't want to hurt your feelings, Stephanie interjected quickly. We knew you'd put effort into this resort idea. Effort? I've spent thousands of dollars and countless hours planning this weekend. I took time off work. I've been here all day setting up. My voice echoed across the empty resort grounds. Mom had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Well, perhaps there was a communication breakdown. These things happen in families. A communication breakdown, I echoed hollowly. Is that what we're calling this? Something still wasn't adding up. If you started planning Grandma's gathering last weekend, why did everyone keep confirming they were coming here? Why did Dad call me on Tuesday to ask if he should bring a suit for the dinner? More uncomfortable silence. Stephanie? I turned to my sister, who had always been the worst at hiding the truth. She sighed, shooting Mom an apologetic look. We were going to come. But then yesterday, everyone started talking about how far the drive was and how much easier it would be to just gather at Grandma's since she's been wanting to host anyway. And once a few people changed their minds. Yesterday, I said. You all decided yesterday to completely change plans, and no one told me until I had been sitting here alone for hours. You're making it sound so dramatic, Mom said, her patience clearly wearing thin. We're here now, aren't we? We brought you food. I don't know what more you want. I looked at the plastic container she was still holding out, suddenly noticing details I had missed before. It wasn't just any container, but the special set I had given Mom last Christmas, the expensive ones with the locking lids she had admired in a catalog. And it wasn't just random leftovers inside. I could now see through the clear plastic, the perfect arrangement of a complete meal: sliced beef, Wellington roasted vegetables, and even a slice of chocolate raspberry cake. You packed this specifically for me, I said slowly, the realization dawning. This isn't just random leftovers you grabbed on your way out. You prepared a full plate before you even left Grandma's. Mom looked uncomfortable. Well, we didn't want you to miss out on the food. Because you knew I would be here, alone. You all knew your plan had changed, and instead of calling me yesterday when you decided you let me drive here, set everything up, and wait for hours. And your solution was to bring me a container of food. Audrey, Stephanie said, her tone now conciliatory. I think you're reading too much into this. It wasn't some conspiracy. Plans changed, people got busy, and things fell through the cracks. Fell through the cracks, I repeated. The phrase echoed in my mind alongside other dismissals I had accepted over the years. Just miscommunication. You're overreacting. You're too sensitive. You always go overboard. Mom checked her watch. We should really head back. Daniel's family needs to leave soon to get the kids to bed. So that's it. You drop off leftovers and leave. After I spent $5,000 on this weekend. Mom's expression hardened. Nobody asked you to spend that kind of money, Audrey. That was your choice. A choice I made because everyone confirmed they were coming. Because Dad said having the family together was the best gift you could ask for. And we are together, Stephanie said. Just not here. The simple, devastating truth of her statement hit me with full force. They were together. Without me. Had been for who knows how long. How long has Grandma's gathering been planned? I asked suddenly, suspicious of the too casual way this had all unfolded. Mom's eyes darted away. I told you it came together last weekend. And when did you actually start celebrating today? More uncomfortable silence. Mom. Well, if you must know, we had a small dinner there last night too, she finally admitted. Just family. Nothing fancy. Last night, I repeated, my voice barely audible. You've been celebrating since yesterday and no one thought to tell me. We knew you'd be busy getting things ready here, Stephanie said quickly. We didn't want to distract you. The absurdity of her statement might have made me laugh if I hadn't been fighting back tears. They hadn't told me, because they knew I would be busy preparing a celebration no one planned to attend. Mom sighed heavily. Look, we've brought you food, we've explained what happened. I don't know what more you want from us. I looked at them. Both these women I had spent my life trying to please, suddenly, seeing our relationship with painful clarity. What I want, I said slowly, is to be treated like I matter. Like I'm actually part of this family. Not just the person who plans things and sends money and gets leftovers when decisions are made without me. Don't be ridiculous, Audrey. Of course you're part of the family, Mom said dismissively. You're just being dramatic now. Stephanie checked her watch again. Mom, we should go. I told Brian I'd be back to help with bedtime. Fine, Mom said, placing the container on a nearby bench. Your dinner's there if you want it. We'll see you at Christmas, I suppose. Without another word, without even a perfunctory hug, they turned and walked back to their car. I watched in stunned silence as they drove away, taillights disappearing down the resort driveway, leaving me alone with a plastic container of food and the wreckage of my carefully planned family reunion. After Mom and Stephanie left, I stood motionless for what felt like hours, staring at the empty driveway where their taillights had disappeared. The resort was eerily quiet, with only the distant sound of waves breaking against the shore and the occasional call of a night bird. The container of leftovers sat untouched on the bench, a pathetic consolation prize for my wasted efforts. The resort manager Michael approached cautiously. "Miss Wilson, is everything all right?" His question broke my trance. "No," I answered honestly. "Everything is not all right." He nodded sympathetically. "I've instructed the kitchen to pack up the prepared food. They can deliver it to your cabin if you'd like. And the anniversary cake too." The kindness of this stranger, contrasted with my family's callousness, brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you, but I couldn't eat any of it right now." "I understand," he said gently. "Everything is paid for, so please use the facilities as you wish. The dining room is still available if you decide you want dinner later." I thanked him and retreated to my cabin, closing the door behind me with a decisive click. Inside the space that had seemed so charming hours earlier now felt like a mockery with its romantic fireplace and lake view, meant for a family celebration that would never happen. I collapsed onto the bed, finally allowing the tears to come. They started slowly, then built into deep body-racking sobs that seemed to originate from some long-buried place within me. I cried for the wasted money, the wasted effort, but mostly for the years I had spent prioritizing a family that clearly did not prioritize me. When the crying finally subsided, I felt hollow, but somehow clearer, as if the tears had washed away a film that had been clouding my vision for years. I reached for my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. Heather answered on the second ring. "Audrey, how's the big family weekend going?" "It's not," I said, my voice raspy from crying. "No one showed up. They decided to celebrate at my grandmother's house instead, without telling me." "What?" Her shock was evident, even through the phone. "Are you serious? After all the planning you did, all the money you spent?" "They brought me leftovers," I said, a hysterical laugh bubbling up, in a Tupperware container. Like I was an afterthought they needed to check off a list. "Oh," Audrey Heather's voice softened. "I'm so sorry. That's beyond inconsiderate. That's cruel." "The worst part is," I continued, the words pouring out, "now they've been celebrating since yesterday. They all got together and deliberately excluded me, knowing I was here, setting everything up. They just let me wait for hours before telling me." "That's not a family," Heather said firmly. "That's a group of people taking advantage of your generosity." Her bluntness was exactly what I needed. For years, I had made excuses for their behavior, rationalized their actions, blamed myself for expecting too much. But hearing it characterized so plainly by someone else made the truth impossible to ignore. "I think you've been right all along," I admitted, "about them taking advantage of me." "I wish I wasn't," she replied. "But Audrey, this pattern has been going on for years. You give, and they take without reciprocating. When was the last time any of them did something thoughtful for you?" I searched my memory and came up empty. There were birthday texts, Christmas gifts that felt obligatory rather than personal, occasional phone calls that invariably ended with requests for money, advice, or assistance. But genuine, unprompted thoughtfulness, I couldn't remember a single instance in recent years. "I need to look at something," I said suddenly. "Can I call you back?" After hanging up, I opened my banking app and began scrolling through past transactions. The evidence was stark and undeniable. In the past year alone, I had sent Christopher $3,000 for car repairs, paid $1,500 toward Daniel's daughter's dance program, contributed $2,000 to Stephanie's kitchen, renovation, and spent countless smaller amounts on gifts, care packages, and family expenses. Moving to my email, I searched for flight confirmations. 6 trips home in the past year, all paid for by me. Each visit had been initiated by me or prompted by some family emergency that required my presence or assistance. Next, I opened my text messages and began scrolling through conversations with family members. A pattern emerged, so clearly it was painful to recognize my lengthy, thoughtful messages met with brief, often delayed responses. My questions about their lives answered superficially, if at all. My offers of help accepted without hesitation, My requests for emotional support ignored or deflected. The calendar on my phone told a similar story. Meticulously noted, family birthdays, anniversaries, school events, all with reminders set weeks in advance, so I wouldn't forget to send gifts or call. In contrast, my own birthday 3 months ago had passed with only text messages from my family, despite the elaborate surprise party I had organized for Daniel just weeks earlier. Most damning of all were the social media posts I had somehow overlooked or rationalized away. Family gatherings I hadn't been invited to. Group photos with captions about everyone being together when I was conspicuously absent. Celebrations of achievements I had never been told about. Evidence of a family life that continued without me, that perhaps preferred to continue without me. I called Heather back, my voice steadier now. I've been so blind. Not blind, she corrected gently. Just hopeful. You wanted to believe the best about your family. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with letting myself be used, I said, a new resolve forming. With pouring all my emotional energy and financial resources into relationships that are completely one-sided. So what are you going to do? It was a good question. The old Audrey would have swallowed her hurt, made excuses for everyone's behavior, and tried even harder to win back their approval and inclusion. But that Audrey had been standing alone in an empty resort, waiting for a family that had no intention of showing up. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. But I know I can't keep doing this. We talked for another hour, Heather providing the sympathetic ear I desperately needed. When we finally hung up, it was past midnight. I was emotionally exhausted but too wired to sleep. Outside my cabin window, the moon cast a silver path across the lake, inviting and peaceful. Making a sudden decision, I changed into warmer clothes and walked down to the private beach. The night air was cool, but not uncomfortable, carrying the fresh scent of pine and clean water. I found a weathered wooden bench near the shore and sat down, watching the gentle waves and listening to the rhythmic sound of water meeting land. For the first time in years, perhaps in my entire adult life, I allowed myself to think about what I wanted, not what my family needed or expected from me. The realization that I barely knew the answer was startling. Who was Audrey Wilson when she wasn't being the reliable daughter, the generous sister, the doting aunt? What did she enjoy, dream about, hope for? I had spent so many years defining myself by my usefulness to my family that I had neglected to develop an identity independent of those relationships. My apartment in Chicago was filled with family photos, but few signs of personal interests or hobbies. My vacation time was entirely allocated to family visits. Even my financial decisions revolved around having funds available for family needs. As I sat watching the moonlight on the water, a memory surfaced from my college years. My roommate Katie had once asked why I spent so much time and energy on family obligations. They're my family, I had answered, as if that explained everything. Family takes care of each other. But it should go both ways, she had replied. They should be taking care of you too. I had dismissed her words, then convinced she simply didn't understand the special bond our family shared. But sitting alone at a resort I had paid for, waiting for a family that had chosen to celebrate without me, those words returned with painful clarity. Family should go both ways. Love should go both ways. Relationships should go both ways. As dawn broke over the lake, painting the sky in delicate pinks and golds, I made a decision. I would not leave the resort early, as part of me had been tempted to do. I had paid for this weekend, and I would enjoy it even if I was alone. Moreover, I would use this time to begin the process of rediscovering who I was and what I wanted from life and relationships moving forward. The first rays of sunlight touching my face felt symbolic, the dawn of a new understanding, and perhaps a new chapter in my life. For the first time since arriving at the empty resort, I felt something other than hurt and humiliation. I felt the faint stirrings of liberation. I returned to my cabin as the resort was coming to life, staff members beginning their morning routines, and early rising guests heading toward the main lodge for breakfast. After a quick shower, I made a decision that felt both small and monumental. I would have breakfast in the dining room, rather than hiding away in my cabin. Dressed in clothes I had packed for family activities, I made my way to the restaurant. The hostess greeted me warmly, not a hint of pity in her expression. "Good morning, table. For one." "Yes, please," I replied, realizing these might be the most honest words I had spoken in years. Table for one. Just me. Not waiting for anyone. Not accommodating anyone else's preferences or schedule. Over a leisurely breakfast of blueberry pancakes and fresh coffee, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet titled Family Financial Record. With methodical precision, I documented every dollar I had spent on family matters over the past 5 years: gifts, loans, travel expenses, event planning, emergency assistance. The total made me gasp, audibly drawing curious glances from nearby diners. $87,000. Nearly $100,000 that could have been in my retirement account, or used for a down payment on a home, or invested in furthering my education, or simply enjoyed on experiences that brought me joy. Instead, it had all flowed one way toward a family that could gather for 2 days of celebration without even telling me. Next, I created a document titled Personal Boundaries, something my therapist had suggested years ago, but I had never taken seriously. I began listing specific changes I would implement immediately. 1. No more sending money without formal agreements about repayment. 2. No more last-minute flights home for non-emergencies. 3. No more planning family events without shared financial responsibility. 4. No more one-sided gift-giving. 5. No more rearranging my schedule to accommodate everyone else's. As I typed, each item felt like removing a weight I had carried for so long. I had forgotten it wasn't a natural part of me. By the time I finished my coffee, I had a comprehensive list of boundaries and specific actions to enforce them. Closing my laptop, I noticed a flyer for the resort's activities. Today offered guided nature walks, kayak rentals, a wine tasting event, and evening yoga on the beach. On impulse, I approached the activities desk and signed up for all of them. This weekend would be mine, filled with things I wanted to do, not obligations or responsibilities toward others. The morning nature walk introduced me to Eleanor, a silver-haired woman in her 70s, with striking blue eyes and an air of serene confidence. As we walked the wooded trail behind the resort, she asked what brought me to Lakeside Haven. Before I could consider a polite deflection, I found myself telling her the truth. I planned a family reunion that no one showed up for. Instead of the awkward sympathy I expected, Eleanor laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "Oh, my dear, welcome to the club." Over the next 2 hours, as we identified wildflowers and spotted woodland creatures, Eleanor shared her own journey of learning to prioritize herself after decades of thankless family caregiving. Her husband had died young, leaving her with 3 children to raise alone. She had devoted everything to them, postponing her own dreams and needs indefinitely. It took my 60th birthday alone, because everyone was too busy, for me to realize I had trained them to see me as a resource, not a person, she explained as we paused by a small waterfall. They loved me, but they didn't respect me, because I had never taught them to. "How did you change things?" I asked, recognizing my own situation in her words. "First I got angry," she said simply. "Really properly angry. Not the kind you swallow down with a smile, but the kind that fuels action. Then I made a list of what I wanted from life before it was too late. And finally I started saying no. Often, and without guilt." "Was it hard? Did your family resist?" "Of course they did," she chuckled. "People don't like change, especially when the old way benefited them. But eventually the relationships that were meant to survive did, just in healthier forms. And I discovered parts of myself I never knew existed." After the walk, Eleanor invited me to join her for lunch, and I gladly accepted. Over grilled salmon and fresh salad, she asked questions no one had asked me in years. What were my passions? What did I enjoy doing in my free time? What dreams had I put on hold? I struggled to answer, which was revealing in itself. I guess I've been so focused on being there for everyone else that I've neglected figuring out what I want. Then this weekend is perfect, Eleanor declared. Consider it your Independence Day. The afternoon passed in a blur of activities I had chosen purely for myself. Kayaking on the lake brought a sense of freedom and self-reliance I hadn't experienced in years. During the wine tasting, I discovered I had a preference for bold reds over the sweet whites my family always chose at gatherings. By the time I joined the sunset yoga session on the beach, I felt more connected to myself than I had in decades. After dinner back in my cabin, I opened my laptop again and drafted an email to my family group. I worked through multiple versions, deleting angry accusations and tearful pleas, finally settling on a message that was clear, direct, and unapologetic. Dear family, after considerable reflection, I've realized our relationship has become unbalanced. I've attached a spreadsheet detailing the financial support I've provided over the past 5 years, totaling $87,000. Moving forward, any financial assistance will require formal loan agreements with repayment terms. Additionally, I will no longer be planning or financing family events without equal contribution from all participants. If you wish to include me in family gatherings, I expect the same consideration and communication you extend to each other. This isn't about money, but about respect and reciprocity. I value myself enough now to require both. Audrey. I attached the detailed spreadsheet, took a deep breath and hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I turned off my phone, something I never did in case family needed to reach me, and slept more soundly than I had in years. The next morning brought a sense of lightness I hadn't anticipated. I had expected to feel anxious about potential angry responses, but instead felt curiously detached, as if having stated my truth clearly had freed me from the burden of managing others' reactions to it. Over breakfast, I met Eleanor again, who listened attentively as I described my email and new boundaries. Good for you, she said approvingly. Now comes the hard part, sticking to those boundaries when they test them, which they absolutely will. Any advice? I asked. Remember that guilt is just the discomfort of changing unhealthy patterns, she said. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. In fact, it usually means you're finally doing something right. As checkout time approached, Eleanor and I exchanged contact information. I spend winters in Chicago, she mentioned. Perhaps we could meet for coffee when I'm in town. The prospect of a friendship based on mutual interest, rather than obligation, felt refreshing. I'd like that very much, I replied sincerely. Before leaving the resort, I stopped at the front desk to speak with Michael, the manager, who had been so kind the night before. I wanted to thank you for your compassion, I told him, and to let you know that despite the circumstances, I had a wonderful weekend. He smiled warmly. I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes the best journeys aren't the ones we planned. As I drove away from Lakeside Haven, I realized I was not returning home the same person who had arrived just 2 days earlier. That Audrey had been defined by her usefulness to others, constantly seeking approval and inclusion through sacrifice. This Audrey was just beginning to explore who she might become when she valued herself as much as she had valued everyone else. My phone, which I had finally turned back on, chimed with notifications. Multiple messages from family members, their tone ranging from defensive to accusatory to manipulative. My mother's message particularly stood out. I don't understand why you're being so dramatic and hurtful, after everything we've done for you. In the past, such messages would have sent me into a spiral of doubt and guilt. I would have apologized, backtracked, done whatever was necessary to restore harmony, even at my own expense. But as I drove through the beautiful Michigan countryside, Eleanor's words echoed in my mind. Guilt is just the discomfort of changing unhealthy patterns. Instead of immediately responding, I connected my phone to the car speakers and called my real estate agent, whom I had been avoiding for months as I diverted my down payment savings to family needs. "Caroline, it's Audrey Wilson. I'm ready to start looking at condos again. Yes, as soon as possible. Tomorrow would be perfect." As the call ended, I felt a surge of excitement about this tangible step toward prioritizing my own future. The road ahead might be challenging, as I navigated changed relationships and established new patterns, but for the first time in years, it was truly my road. 3 months after the resort incident, as summer transitioned into early fall, I sat on the balcony of my new condo overlooking Lake Michigan. The morning sun cast a golden glow across the water, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of the potted herbs I had started growing, a hobby I had discovered I enjoyed. My coffee steamed beside my laptop, where I was reviewing final changes to my new personal website. After years of helping everyone else achieve their goals, I had decided to use my financial expertise to launch a side business as a financial independence coach for women. The journey to this moment had not been easy or straightforward. The initial responses to my email had been exactly as Eleanor predicted: defensive, guilt-inducing, and occasionally hostile. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart. Stephanie accused me of keeping a creepy spreadsheet to hold over their heads. Christopher insisted I had offered money freely, and it was weird and petty to bring it up now. Daniel alone had responded with some reflection, acknowledging that the family dynamic had become unbalanced, though even he balked at the idea of repayment plans. For 2 weeks I had maintained radio silence, giving myself time to process their reactions without being pulled back into old patterns. When I finally responded, it was with brief, clear messages, reiterating my boundaries without justification or apology. I declined family events that felt like attempts to guilt me back into my old role, but accepted an invitation to lunch with Daniel, the only one who had shown any self-awareness. That lunch proved to be a turning point. Away from the group dynamic, Daniel admitted that the family had taken my generosity for granted. "You were always so willing to help that we stopped seeing it as exceptional," he explained. "It became the expected baseline." "Did you ever wonder why I was never included in some family gatherings?" I asked directly. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Honestly, sometimes it was because when you were there, everyone relied on you to handle everything. Other times," he paused, clearly choosing his words carefully, "I think people felt judged by how much you were willing to do. Your level of giving made everyone else's contributions seem inadequate by comparison." His honesty, though painful, was illuminating. My overfunctioning had created resentment on both sides. Me resenting their lack of reciprocation, them resenting the implicit expectations my behavior created. Over the following months, I maintained my boundaries firmly, but without animosity. I declined requests for money, but offered practical advice instead. I attended some family functions, but arrived and left on my own schedule. I brought reasonable contributions to potlucks, rather than catering entire events. Most importantly, I invested significant time and resources in my own well-being and future. I joined a women's hiking group, started therapy with a counselor specializing in family dynamics, took a photography class, and made the decision to invest in my own home, rather than continuing to rent while subsidizing my family's lifestyles. The mortgage approval letter for my lakefront condo had arrived the previous week, a tangible symbol of my new priorities. Not everyone in my family adapted well to the new dynamic. My mother still made passive-aggressive comments about how I used to be so generous and cared more about family. Stephanie had largely withdrawn, apparently finding our relationship not worth the effort without the practical benefits I had previously provided. But Daniel and I had developed a more authentic connection based on mutual respect, rather than one-sided giving. And surprisingly, my father had begun reaching out more directly, suggesting one-on-one lunches where we had conversations about our lives, rather than just family logistics. As promised, Eleanor had contacted me upon her return to Chicago, and our coffee meeting had evolved into a weekly tradition. Her perspective as someone 20 years further along a similar journey provided invaluable guidance and reassurance. Under her mentorship, I had begun developing workshops on financial independence for women, combining my professional expertise with my personal experience of breaking free from financially exploitative relationships. The most profound change, however, was internal. I no longer defined my worth by what I could do for others or how much I sacrificed. I had learned to recognize the difference between genuine generosity that springs from abundance and the compulsive giving that came from insecurity and a need for approval. I had discovered that self-care was not selfish, but necessary, that boundaries were not walls, but healthy definitions of where I ended and others began. My phone chimed with a calendar reminder: Mom and Dad, 1030 a.m. coffee. Today would be the first time I had seen both parents together since the anniversary debacle. I had suggested meeting at a neutral cafe rather than at their home, another small but significant boundary. The fact that they had agreed without protest suggested some evolution in their understanding of our new relationship. As I prepared to leave, I checked my email one last time and found a message from a woman who had attended my first financial independence workshop the previous weekend. Audrey, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story and expertise. After our session, I finally found the courage to stop paying my adult son's bills and start funding my own retirement. For the first time in decades, I feel hopeful about my future. You've changed my life. Her words brought tears to my eyes. The pain of my family experience was transforming into something meaningful, helping others avoid or escape similar patterns. My personal healing was creating ripples beyond my own life. The coffee meeting with my parents went better than expected. There were awkward moments and old patterns tried to reassert themselves. I noticed Mom expectantly pushing the bill toward my side of the table, a habit so ingrained she probably wasn't even aware of it. But when I simply said, "Shall we split this 3 ways?" she agreed without comment, small steps but meaningful ones. That evening, as I prepared dinner in my new kitchen, my phone rang with an incoming video call from Daniel and his family. His children proudly showed me art projects and performed newly learned dance moves. Before ending the call, Daniel said something that would have once seemed impossible. "We're planning a small cookout next weekend. Nothing fancy, everyone's bringing something. No pressure, but we'd love to have you there if you're free." The casual invitation with no obligation or expectation felt like a breakthrough. "I'd like that," I replied sincerely. "I'll bring my roasted vegetable salad." "Perfect," he said with a genuine smile. "Just yourself and the salad, that's all we need." As I ended the call, I realized that was perhaps the most profound lesson of my journey. Being valued for who I am, not what I provide, or how much I sacrifice. Building relationships based on mutual respect and reciprocity, rather than obligation and utility. Understanding that love should not require self-erasure or endless giving without return. Standing on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I felt a deep sense of peace. The path forward would still have challenges. Some relationships might never fully recover. Old habits would try to reassert themselves, and finding the balance between healthy giving and self-protection would require ongoing vigilance. But I had found my voice and my value, and I would never again allow either to be diminished. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with people you love? What helped you maintain those boundaries when they were tested? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to hear more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics and finding your worth. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do both for yourself and others is to clearly define what is and isn't acceptable in how people treat you. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to honor your own worth in all your relationships.